And let me just set the stage by saying that probably somewhere between 200 million and 300 million Muslims are radicalized, and the free world should be very concerned about that, folks. So I like to bring on the scene every now and then, hopefully once a year and sometimes more if possible, the expert on that. And you've heard her, you've seen her on YouTube, on Fox News, on various other media outlets. You've seen Brigitte Gabriel, Act for America. I began getting acquainted with Brigitte over a decade ago, as she was just getting going in the early 2000s with the organization known as Act for America. We're going to give you contact information and other information as we move along in this segment. Brigitte Gabriel, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Jen. I'm delighted to be back with you.
Brigitte, how do you see national security advancing here? We're just over a year now into the Trump administration. Are you encouraged? Are you discouraged? Tell me what you're seeing.
I am encouraged because we have a leader at the White House right now who's basically pretty much the only leader in the free world right now.
That's right.
Who has the backbone to say what needs to be said, something most leaders around the world are afraid to say, and that is our civilization is at war with radical Islam. We are at war with radical Islam. And President Trump is undoing all the damage that Obama has done to the country. President Trump is removing the shackles around the ankles of the FBI and the first responders and our intelligence community and empowering them to do what they need to do to protect our communities without political correctness. And because of that, I am encouraged and feeling better about the state of our national security because our enemies know it. There's a new sheriff in town, and they're going to think twice before messing with the United States.
Okay, what about a wall, southern border? Let's just talk that for just a minute here, because I know you share the concerns of many Americans that some who are coming across the southern border are Islamic extremists. There's all sorts of evidence for that. Clearly, a wall would be a tremendous help. Give me your thoughts on that.
We need the wall. The wall is non-negotiable, and I am so glad to see that the president right now is putting his foot down and saying, no wall, no nothing. And this is exactly why he was elected by the American people. And when you look at the different polls and the different research that have been done around the country, most Americans agree with the president on securing our border and reinforcing our immigration laws. We know, Jen, for years, you and I have been talking on the radio for at least 10 years.
That's right.
We know that terrorists have been working with the drug cartels on the Mexican border, paying top dollars to these money-hungry drug cartels who would sell their soul for the dollar to basically smuggle terrorists into the United States. They are so sophisticated that even our elected officials refer to them as OTM, other than Mexicans.
That's right.
The fact that they refer to it as, OTM, other than Mexicans, says that we have many nationalities coming through the Mexican border. You add to that Hezbollah has a major operation in South America. Different terrorist organizations have wised up, like ISIS, Al-Qaeda before them, that if you can come to South America and work with the drug cartel, you can literally skip through into the United States through the Mexican border. Our enemy's not dumb. And this is why we must protect ourselves and we must build that wall no matter what it takes. And I can tell you, my organization, Act for America, is committed to helping the president and mobilizing the grassroots to do whatever we can, putting pressure on elected officials nationwide to make sure they support the president in building that wall.
Brigitte is the author of a couple of books I'm very familiar with. One is called They Must Be Stopped. The other is Because They Hate, a survivor of Islamic terror warns America. Learn a lot more at actforamerica.org, actforamerica.org. We're going to give you a little cheerleading lesson just a little bit later, folks, about getting involved in her organization. First, Brigitte, I want to ask you about a couple of other issues. Number one, I am thrilled almost out of my mind that there are more Christians now coming into America, fleeing the conflict in the Middle East, more Christians coming than Muslims.
The true persecuted minority.
Yes, the true persecuted. True persecuted, yes. The first months of Trump presidency, Christians accounted for much growing share of the U.S. refugee arrivals, according to Pew Research. A real cause for rejoicing.
Absolutely, because, under Obama, he wanted to bring majority Muslim. Over 70% of the people that we brought into the United States were all Muslims, especially in the last year. As a matter of fact, last year of the Obama presidency, he wanted to make sure we bring as many Syrian Muslims as we can, that he even sent a team to Jordan to speed up their screening, that so-called screening, the joke of a screening, to rush them to come to the United States before he leaves office. Well, Trump came in and he changed all that, because let's face it, it is the Christians in the Middle East who are being persecuted and killed for their religion. It's the Christians who are suffering and being expelled from Syria, from Egypt. Look what they're doing to them on Egypt, on the holiday. Every holiday we hear about the bombings and the slaughter. Right. Those are the people that we need to bring in. Look at the Iraqi Christians. I mean, here we brought in all these Muslim Iraqi refugees. What about the Christians? Almost 1 million Christians left Iraq ever since we invaded Iraq and killed Saddam Hussein. So I'm glad to see that we are bringing more Christians to America, because if we're going to bring refugees into the United States, let's start by bringing people who share our values, who share our principles, who share our understanding of how things should be done, who will be more likely to assimilate into our society without any problem. They're bringing people who don't share our values.
Brigitte, do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood will get labeled as a terror group? So many of us have wanted this for so long. I don't see it in motion yet. What do you think?
Well, we are working on that behind the scenes. I can assure you. As a matter of fact, just last week, I was working with Senator Cruz back and forth with his office all week long. Act for America is launching a massive direct mail campaign to alert citizens nationwide about the importance of passing the Muslim Brotherhood bill nationwide. For those who are not on our mailing list, I encourage you to go to actforamerica.org and sign up to receive our information, because what we're going to be doing with our direct mail piece and educating the public as to why we must designate them as a terrorist organization and get people to call their elected officials. We are writing instructions on what you can do in calling your elected officials, whether senators, whether in Congress, to push them to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. So there is work on it, Jen, behind the scenes, but right now, because of all the issues that are coming in one after the other, I mean, bless Trump's heart. I mean, the poor man, he has not been able to take a breath. He's always putting out one fire after another from the day he stepped into office. So once things, calm down a bit, you'll be hearing more in the next few months about the Muslim Brotherhood and its designation.
Talking to Brigitte Gabriel for this segment. Again, learn a lot more at actforamerica.org. Brigitte, I have heard you say, kind of quoting you here, Europe waited too long. Now, let me add to that. I mean, I think the sun is setting on Europe. Her churches are now mosques. Her people are now afraid. Jews in Europe and some parts of Europe, particularly Germany, must be accompanied by police just to carry out daily routines. Jews in France are fleeing to Israel because of what's happened to Europe. And, America could easily make the same mistakes that Europe has made. I don't think it's too late for America, do you?
It is not too late for America. Now is our time to organize and make sure we learn lessons from what's happening in Europe. You've heard me say this before, Jen. Europe is at stage 4 cancer. It's too late for them right now to turn around. America is at stage 2.
Yes.
We can still operate. We can still take out the cancer that is growing within us. Thank God we have Trump right now, who has no compunction about operating and taking out terrorist cells operating in the country and shipping them overseas or expelling them from the country. He will deal swiftly with that. But this is our time. This is our time to see that what's happening in Europe is a preview as to what's coming to the United States. And that's why we must be organized. And a lot of people tell me, Jen, Brigitte, I understand the issue. I am so frustrated, but I feel helpless. What is my voice going to do? I do not know what to do. I do not know how to be active. I do not know how I can make a difference. And I tell people, we teach you how to make a difference. Join us. I started Act for America to empower Americans and mobilize them to learn how to make a difference in their community. Go to our website, actforamerica.org, and we name the organization Act for America. Think about America, not wish for America, not hope for America, not pray for America. You can do all the above, but without taking action, nothing happens. Go to actforamerica.org. Join us. Sign up to get our emails and action alerts. Sign up to start a chapter in your community. We want people starting chapters. Start a chapter. We will guide you. We will hold your hand. We will teach you how to hold a meeting. We will teach you what to do in your community. And here's the good news. We started Acts for America, our chapters, in 2007. I'm so proud to tell you, Jen, that today we have passed almost 100 bills nationwide, 13 bills in Congress and over 82 bills on the state level in different states supporting national security. So everyone can make a difference. We have chapter leaders who started, housewives working in their home, mothers, started Act for America chapter in their breakfast nook, inviting their 4 neighbors sitting around the breakfast nook. Today, some of their chapters are in the hundreds. So if you're listening to this broadcast and wondering to yourself, what can I do? How can I make a difference for the country? Our country needs you. Go to actforamerica.org and join us. Sign up to lead a chapter, especially if you have any activism experience.
Yeah, I would second that, folks. And, I headquarter out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. We've got an active Act for America organization here in the Twin Cities, and it's started by a very ordinary person. You don't have to be highly skilled in security issues. You just have to care about your country and then act. So do as Brigitte suggests. Check out actforamerica.org. All the info you're going to need at that website.
We need
Go ahead.
to do, Jen, what the left does.
Yeah, exactly.
The left is so organized. They have small groups. They've got, people inviting their neighbors for coffee or tea at 7:30 in the evening. Get your friends together. Have some hors d'oeuvres. Watch a video. Stick a video about what's happening. Mm-hmm. We will provide you with information. We will send you a kit once you decide to do something like that, teaching you exactly what to do. Have everybody signed up and say, you know what? We're forming our own group, and start with your immediate friends. And then we can notify you when there is bills coming down for a vote, so you can call your elected official. It doesn't take more than 2 minutes of your time. Can you imagine if you start a group with 4 or 5 people sitting in your breakfast nook or in your family room, and then each one reaches out to 2 of their friends, and the 2 of their friends reach out to another 2. Before you know it, within 6 months period, you have a chapter of at least 200 people, all making phone calls to your elected officials and all participating and making a difference in your state. That's how we make a difference. That's exactly how the left is doing it. On our side, we listen to the radio, people listen to talk radio, people watch the news and shake their heads in absolute frustration, yet they don't take action. We are helping you and teaching you how to take action. Join us.
Brigitte, I'm intrigued by a new book you're writing, and the reason I'm intrigued is we were talking off air, and you're very well aware that I live in a part of the country known as Little Mogadishu, and that's Minnesota. We have many, many Somalis here. It could be up to 100,000. I'll just be up front with my audience here. I pay thousands and thousands of dollars at my annual conference because we are secure at my annual conference. We have up to 20 policemen hired that they leave no stone unturned when it comes to security. But I say all that because this part of the country is particularly plagued with a lot of terror ties. Take a couple of minutes and talk to my audience about what you're writing and the connection that it actually has, because you're more than aware of the situation here in Minnesota.
The situation in Minnesota is so concerning, but unfortunately the majority of people around the country have no idea what is happening in Minnesota and how the Somali community is basically the largest terrorism harboring community in America. Mm-hmm. Who would have thought we're going to be talking about, most people think about ISIS, and all of these things. But most people don't realize that out of the Somali community in Minnesota alone, there are over 42 members who are now fighting overseas with terrorists. The first American suicide bomber that was killed as an American citizen is a Somali refugee from Minnesota. The attacks are unbelievable. And I'm detailing some of that. I'm writing a new book, Jan, and my new book is titled Rise, in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom. So the title is Rise. The subtitle is In Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom. It's a battle cry for Americans to wake up and realize we must come together now. It is vital that we come together now for the sake of the future of our country, for the future of our children. Because Europe is lost, we are the last man standing. No one has the strength that we have to stand up and defeat the free world. Australia doesn't have our strength. Canada doesn't have our strength. New Zealand doesn't have our strength. Nobody has our strength. England doesn't have our strength. America is the last man standing.